الله بالخير. في قلب منطقة المحيطين الهندي والهادئ تواصل إندونيسيا رابعة أكبر دولة في العالم تطبيق سياسة عدم الانحياز والتكيف مع الديناميات المتغيرة في المنطقة. تقرير التحليل الاستراتيجي لإندونيسيا مستند يشرح كيف تفرض الدولة الأرخبيلية توازن القوى مع النفوذين الأميركي والصيني في منطقة جنوب شرق آسيا. فما هي استراتيجية إندونيسيا البحرية؟ وهل تستطيع أن تحدد مستقبل آسيا؟ كيف تتجنب إندونيسيا فخ الديون للحفاظ على سيادتها؟ ما هي حصتها في نظام عالمي متعدد الأقطاب؟ وهل تدفع أكبر دولة مسلمة في العالم ثمن تضامنها مع القضية الفلسطينية؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر من الدكتور فضلي زون النائب في البرلمان الإندونيسي في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Fadli Zon, member of the Indonesian House of Representatives, chairman of the Committee for Interparliamentary Cooperation, vice chair of the League of Parliamentarians of Al-Quds, former Deputy Speaker of the Indonesian Parliament and Vice Chairman of Gerindra Party. Your Excellency, Dr. Fadli Zon, salam and welcome to Al Mayadeen. This is the proximate aspect, and I'm Zainab Al-Safar. So good to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam. The U.S. Department of Defense 2018 National Defense Strategy highlights, Dr. Zon, the importance of working with regional allies and partners in order to manage China's rise as a strategic competitor to the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific region. In your perspective, sir, is this rivalry in the region the reason that offers Indonesia leverage in international affairs?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Sister Zainab. First of all, I think it is very important. Also, I would like to briefly maybe state it about the Indonesian foreign policy. So in order to have our basis comprehension of today's Indonesia relation with US and China as well as other countries. One of our prominent founding fathers, the late Muhammad Hatta, said that we should have this rowing between two reefs. Yeah, in Indonesian call it mendayung di antara dua karang. So we must remain the subject who reserve the right to decide our own destiny and fight for our own goal, which is the independence for our whole of Indonesia. And also the basis of our foreign policy is our national interest. So therefore, it is very obvious that Indonesia foreign policy is designed to be a player, not being played by any party. In other words, our foreign policy is independent and active. And it is independent because Indonesia does not side with world powers. It is actively to act to some extent that Indonesia does not maintain a passive or reactive stand on both regional and international issues, but takes seeking active participation in their settlement. So in other words, Indonesia's independent and active policy is not neutral policy, but it is one that does not align Indonesia with superpowers.
Forgive me if my questions would sound a bit provocative, perhaps, in certain places, but we need to understand the picture more concerning the international affairs and the interests of Indonesia in this regard. According to our reference, Indonesia Strategic Analysis Report, today, like most other Asian states, Indonesia is trying to triangulate between Beijing and Washington. This is a fact. Experts note that China is its largest trading partner, but also its largest security threat. Do you agree? I want to know if this is true. How far is that true? And can the United States be a valuable ally in protecting Indonesia's territorial integrity, sir?
Well, I believe that our interest is stability in the region, especially in Southeast Asia, and then also prosperity. We want ASEAN to be the center of growth here, because Indonesia is a vital key player in ASEAN, and now we are the chair of ASEAN.
Yes.
So we want ASEAN and the ASEAN countries, 10 countries, Association of Southeast Asian Countries, become key players in the region. And we want to maintain the balance, actually, of these major powers, the US and China. We are very good both with both countries, with both, maybe we can call it superpowers, even though we know there is a tension, maybe, and also some trade war between China and United States. But we know they're also very close engaged in trade. So it is important to see that what we want here is to be, not the victim of
Yes.
this relation, but we want to be part of the key players in the region.
Of course, as chair of the ASEAN, as you said, Indonesia, and as an ally also of the US, in this sense, can Indonesia determine the future of Asia?
I think it's, of course, I think I believe that Indonesia can be a very important factor, especially because Indonesia now is the fourth largest country in terms of the population, more than 275 million people. And we are also the largest Muslim country in terms of population of the Muslim. And we are very strategic in the place. So I think we can determine our future with this situation, can be determinant to the future of Asia.
Yeah, allow me here, since you talked about Indonesia being the largest Muslim nation and the fourth largest country also in the world, allow me to ask you here in the sense, now there is a very horrific incident, successive incidents took place, whether in Sweden or in Denmark, and that of the desecration of the Holy Quran. This is a crime against Islam and the Muslims. Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation. Are you urging any steps, any concrete steps and action to be taken in this regard, sir?
Yes, of course, we condemn the desecration of the Holy Quran in some Western countries. And I think it is an act of intolerance, an act of Islamophobia, and we condemn this, the governments and also the Indonesian parliaments. I think we are the one also very fast in condemning this.
Yes.
And we support also the result from this General Assembly voting last time that
the Organization of the Islamic Conference,
the Organization of Islamic Conference, and also through our parliamentary diplomacy in the PUIC, Parliamentary Union of OIC member states.
But are you, in a sense, boycotting Sweden or Denmark in this regard?
Well, our government have not come to that decision yet, but we encourage to engage them that an act of this, what you call it, intolerance towards Islam, towards Muslim, will not be beneficial for those countries.
Right.
And I think we have to talk to them that this is not an act of freedom of expression,
exactly,
or expressing democracy, but rather this is a violation of democracy itself, a violation of tolerance, and an act of Islamophobia.
Exactly. Now, Indonesia's economy is expected to keep growing, sir, since it is heavily investing in infrastructure. Indonesia is also optimistic about the Chinese BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. China's lending filled a funding gap, but can Indonesia avoid a debt trap? How can this engagement with the Belt and Road serve to protect Indonesia's interests and maintain its sovereignty at the same time? After economics and trade, of course, the health sector has become a priority focus of Beijing's engagement with Indonesia. Do you believe that China is expanding its health diplomacy in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think, of course, we have to be cautious when you mentioning about the debt trap. Yeah. And but I think the initiative itself, it's economic potential for Indonesia and some other countries. This Belt and Road Initiative can bring number of countries, including Indonesia, to prosperity. But of course, there is also some concern about the debt trap, giving example of some other countries. But as you know, the BRI is a colossal Chinese infrastructure project that stretches across the globe, including Indonesia. And projects under this initiative include the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed train, which is slated for operation this August in Indonesia. So
yes,
we have that also, but I think we can still manage this, yeah, to some extent. I observe we are still far away from the debt trap. So we believe the engagement, economic engagement with China should be a mutual benefit for both of us.
Both
and
nations.
Also, yeah, both,
right.
Yes.
Now, the government of Indonesia is making plans to create a new formal Coast Guard agency to take on and augment the capabilities of its existing maritime security agency. Indonesia, Dr. Zon, as a maritime power, what is its vision on the one hand, and what are its strategies and impediments or obstacles ahead?
Well, Indonesia, as an archipelagic country with more than 17,000 islands, is perceived as one of the greatest global maritime powers now. So such potential has not happened and still really needs more efforts. And we have this global maritime fulcrum vision in 2014. At that time, the vision raised national awareness that further got the international attention. So this maritime potential maritime power should be, I think, should be our priority now, and we would like to see the cooperation with some major players in the region. of course, with China, with the United States, and with other countries, and making this maritime strategic place become not only potential but powers.
Sure. Now, Indonesia has accepted the Quad and the AUKUS as facts of life, but recently Indonesian president urged these groupings to be supporters of efforts to build peace and stability in the region, espousing engagement, not containment. Could Indonesia, with its fellow Southeast Asian countries, help bring China and the US back from the brink, as some might argue?
Well, I think all these groupings should be, in our perspective, Indonesia make ASEAN as our priority. So all these groupings, like what you mentioned, BRICS, Quad, AUKUS, and other groupings in the region, should maybe in our case should follow the interests of ASEAN. So for Indonesia, ASEAN is our priority, and I think we want to make this ASEAN become a center of growth. Yeah, so we want everyone to be the winners, not losers, because the intention is to make the center as the ASEAN as a priority for growth. Yeah.
Right. Now, we live now in the multipolar moment, Dr. Zong. Can Indonesia be a strong pole in a multipolar region? What's Indonesia's stake in a multipolar world order, and what role might it play on regional security issues?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, in the multipolar world, we have to have a balance of power. Yeah.
Sure.
So Indonesia can be the key player in making this balance, especially in the region. And we believe that Indonesia can be the fulcrum also of this balance of power to make the better world, to make a peaceful world, and to avoid conflicts, and especially to avoid wars. Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yes.
we will concentrate especially in enhancing the positive cooperation between our countries and other regions.
Right. Now, history shows that many developing countries have experienced economic injustice. Global South countries have the right to be part of the global supply chain and be free from trade discrimination and debt traps. In the sense, Dr. Zon, should Indonesia join BRICS, including Indonesia as a new member, may offer potential benefits to also for the BRICS countries, right?
Yes, I believe, in my own perspective, that Indonesia should join BRICS because I think it is important for Indonesia to be part of this very potential alignment. And as I mentioned earlier, for us, the most important thing is the national interest. And to be part of the BRICS, it can make also the balance for our nation to the global groupings. And I believe also in the future, and then even now, even Indonesia was once the founder of non-aligned movement, but our foreign policy should be now moved to multi-alignment rather than non-alignment, to multi-alignment. So with multi-alignments, we can have more friends and also potential to
interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
to take the balance. Yeah.
yes, sure. Well, Indonesia and the Indonesian civil society have long been staunch supporters of Palestine. Indonesia had refused to host the Israeli team at the Under-20 FIFA World Cup, also recently, in the wake of the deadly Israeli aggression, attacks, and violence in Jenin. Jakarta called on the UN Security Council for the immediate implementation of all of its resolutions related to Palestine. Tell us more, sir, about Indonesia's unwavering support for Palestine.
Regarding Indonesian stand for Palestine, I think Indonesia remains committed to championing Palestinian rights, and Indonesia has very strong support for Palestinian struggle to meet their fundamental rights for self-determination, and especially for pursuing and preserving the hope for the creation of a sovereign, independent state of Palestine. And with Al-Quds, of course, with Al-Quds, with Jerusalem
as the capital, yes,
of Palestine. So I think in this sense, in this stand, Indonesian people, Indonesian government, and Indonesian parliament, we are in the same line, and we are very, we have a very strong stand on this matter, including what you have mentioned. We even sacrifice as a host of World Cup at that time, a couple months ago, because our principle to maintain our position towards Palestine.
Right. Now, in Bangkok in 1967, when Thailand's foreign minister helped forge an agreement to end hostilities between Indonesia and Malaysia, there and then it was at this meeting that the concept for one of the world's most successful regional organizations or groupings was born, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Is the clear, vivid regional consciousness in Southeast Asia beginning to take hold in the Middle East, with Beijing's agreement to normalize relations between, to mediate, of course, to normalize relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia? And is there a role for Indonesia to play in this rapprochement?
I think we are very grateful with this initiative, and of course, we support this, and also the ASEAN countries, I think, support this initiative because it will make our region, especially in Asia, become more peaceful and stable. So, as you know, the ASEAN countries, now we have also trouble with one of our member, Myanmar, because we have not resolved the situation in Myanmar after the military coup 2 years ago, and now occupied, the government occupied by the military junta, and we have some ongoing problems with the refugee of Rohingya in Cox's Bazar, in Kutupalong in Bangladesh.
With the flow of refugees from the Rohingya into various nations too.
It's more than 1 million people. So this is also one of the issues that we will discuss during the AIPA assembly next week. AIPA is ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly, which will be held in Jakarta this coming week. And one of the issues in the political committee will be discussed is about, we will discuss about this implementation of 5-point consensus by the Myanmar.
Right. Dr. Fadli Zon, member of the Indonesian House of Representatives, thank you very much, sir, for this interesting discussion. Always a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Most welcome. وعليكم السلام. إذا ما أراد العالم أن يرى أفضل مثال على كيفية إمكان أن يكون التنوع الحجر الأساس للتسامح، فينبغي لنا ألا ننظر إلى أبعد من هذه الدولة الواقعة في جنوب شرق آسيا، فالصورة السلمية للتسامح تعكس النسيج المتنوع لإندونيسيا، هذه الفسيفساء من الثقافات والأعراق. وتعمل أكبر دولة ذات أغلبية مسلمة في العالم على توسيع الدبلوماسية الإسلامية باستمرار. ولكن هل إندونيسيا التي ترفض التطبيع مع الكيان الإسرائيلي وتناصر جهاراً الفلسطينيين وحقوقهم وتخطو خطوات جبارة في هذا السياق قد يحاصرها الغرب الأطلسي بسلاحه المزعوم المتمثل في حقوق الإنسان والديمقراطية، كما يفعل ضد من يقف في وجه مشاريعه التوسعية لثنيها عن تضامنها مع فلسطين وإرغامها على التخلي عنها. من كل الميادين سلاما وتحية، في أمان الله.